What's up everybody, thank you for stopping by. I am BH the Uncivilized and this is going to be an analysis for the film Inception. Now this will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen it already then you may wish to do that first and then come back to this video afterwards and let me know what you think then. In fact, if you haven't seen it, you might want to check out my non-spoiler review where I give an overview of the film to give you an idea as to whether it's something or not you'd like to see. Short answer to that though is yes it is. It's an absolutely brilliant film. But if you have seen it, or if you just don't care for spoilers, then we continue. Now, in the last analysis I did a few years ago, I talked about whether I felt it was a dream or reality, and I came to the conclusion that I felt it lent more towards being a dream. In this video, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I do believe that it is a dream. However, what I'm going to be doing here is explaining why I think it's a dream. But however, I'm going to be approaching it from an angle which I don't think has been done before. So that's the basis of this video. Now, a few things before I start. First of all, the totems don't really mean anything. As Arthur points out, they only work when you're in someone else's dream and not necessarily in your own dream. Also, they only work when the other person doesn't know the properties of your totem, and we do see Cobb telling Ariadne the properties of his totem. Also, it was pointed out that the spinning top wasn't his actual totem, it was actually the wedding ring, as he only has his wedding ring on inside the dream world. However, again, it doesn't really mean a whole lot. At best, it just tells us what he thinks is real and what he thinks is a dream. Now, Cobb makes a proposal to Saito about teaching him to defend his subconscious. Saito knew it was a trick, but allowed it to continue. Now, when they wake up, we find out this is because he was auditioning them. Now, this tells us that Saito is somebody who thinks things through. He's like a chess player. He's putting the pieces where he wants them to be, whilst allowing the other person to think they're in control. Now, of course, he didn't realize he was still in a dream, so technically he was bested. But when he did find out, he did congratulate Cobb. And when he wakes up on the train, we see that he smiles, showing that he's still in control of his emotions. Whereas with Cobb, this scene establishes his quick temper, his inability to stay calm under pressure. That's not to say he doesn't try, he just fails at it. Now, when Arthur told Cobb that Saito knew it was a dream, he said that it doesn't matter, you can get the information anyway. After talking to Mal, he abseils down the castle wall by tying a rope around the chair that Mal sat on. Now, I'm not going to get into the improbable physics of this part, it is a dream after all. But when Mal got up, causing him to descend quickly, he exclaimed, "God damn it," showing his frustration. Now that serves as a subtle prelude to when they wake up in the apartment and Cobb needs to get Saito to talk, but they're running out of time. First, Cobb tells Saito that the corporation at hiding would not accept failure and it wouldn't last 2 days. He then throws him on the floor and points a gun at him. And when they wake up on the train, he hastily gets off at Kyoto because he doesn't like trains. We find out the reason for that later. But going back to the apartment, why would Cobb tell Saito his employer would not accept failure? Now, it sets up some of the events that we see happen later on, but this isn't something that you would tell someone that you're trying to break. So when we put that with the previous "goddammit" and the subsequent gun pointing and the hastily getting off the train, what we have is a person who, try as he might, doesn't handle pressure very well. Now, the film moves on to explaining the technology and some of the history, which we learn primarily from Arthur during these scenes. Now, going back to the earlier parts of the film, it was Arthur that pointed out that Saito knew of the trick, and Arthur who let Cobb know he was running out of time. Now, Arthur lets Cobb know their helicopter ride is ready. He explains to Saito why it is impossible that true inspiration cannot be faked, because the subject's mind always trace the genesis of the idea. Don't think about elephants. Cobb disagrees, but is elusive about why and who he had done it to. We later find out it was his wife. Arthur also tells us that 5 minutes in the real world equates to 1 hour in the dream world, that the military develops the dream sharing technology. He tells us that you cannot wake up if there is still time on the clock unless you are killed inside a dream, and then he tells us what a totem is and what they're used for. We do learn from Cobb as well. However, what we learn from Cobb is really based on experiences, finding yourself in the middle of the dream, not recreating from real life, and that one cannot control their subconscious. Whereas what we learnt from Arthur is based on study of the technology and its history. So Arthur is the tech geek of the group. We later learn more things from Arthur concerning Mal and that she's actually dead, and acknowledging that Cobb breaks his own rules, as well as what happened on the Stein job and what Mr. Charles is. This is also established that Arthur knows his shit. So now we're introduced to Eames, and what he brings right away is the belief that Inception is possible but difficult. He further goes on to say that you need imagination, which is a quality that he believes Arthur lacks, and that you need the simplest form of the ideas for it to stick. Now after Cobb gets chased and we're introduced to Yusuf the chemist, we're back at the workshop where Eames is explaining his plan to impersonate Browning on the first level, and then on the second level, Robert Fisher's own projection of Browning should feed the idea back to him. Should being the operative word here. In fact, he emphasizes it. Eames is the experimenter. His knowledge is based on trial and error. Back when meeting Cobb in Mombasa, he said that he's tried Inception before but it didn't work, thus leading him to the conclusion that you need the simplest form of the idea. But this isn't something that's been proven. Alright, so I need to talk a little bit now about Ariadne. Now, she is introduced by Miles as being a better architect than Cobb. During her dream training with Cobb, she bends the world when wondering what happens when you mess around with the physics. She's constantly asking questions, some of which Cobb doesn't want to answer. Ariadne is inquisitive, an experimenter like Eames but less experienced. And it's this inquisitive nature that leads her to joining Cobb in his dream where she sees he keeps the memories of his wife. Now Ariadne wasn't originally supposed to be on the plane, let alone go inside the dream with them. But she tells Cobb that he needs somebody there who knows what's going on, if not her, then Arthur, to which Cobb then requests Saito to get another seat on the plane. But let's look at that. Why would Cobb, the most skilled extractor, be taking advice from a novice that he himself employed? Furthermore, advice that involves changing the plan at last minute? I'll come back to that. So, going into this heist, which if at all possible is extremely difficult, we have Cobb, who fails under pressure, Eames, who based his plan on estimation, Saito, the calm thinking strategist who wasn't really supposed to be there, Ariadne, inquisitive but inexperienced and also wasn't really supposed to be there, Yusuf, the chemist who really goes into the field so perhaps not so experienced in that respect, and Arthur, the one person who might actually be of sound body and mind but doesn't believe it would actually work. Let that sink in for a moment. Now, not too long after entering the dream world, they're attacked by Fisher's militarized subconscious and Saito is shot. We then find out that Arthur was responsible for the research where Fisher's mental military training didn't show up. Whoops. So either Arthur isn't as good as we've been led to believe, or Fisher is just a lot better at keeping secrets. Doesn't really matter either way. We also find out that with the powerful sedative they use, killing Saito won't wake him up, it would actually just send him into limbo. Cobb kind of forgot to mention that. Whoops. But as a result, they have a lot less time to complete the task than originally planned, so not really off to a great start. This in turn leads to a drastic change of plans, with everything being rushed, running with the Mr. Charles Gambit, missing the initial kick, Fisher getting shot and going into limbo, Saito also going into limbo, Cobb and Ariadne also going into limbo to rescue them, and at the end we're supposed to believe that Cobb's team was successful in planting the idea in Fisher's mind to break up his father's company. Now, with everything considered, it's actually unlikely that the job was a success. Notice that we don't really get any proof of it, we just get an insinuation that it succeeded. Certainly there's no way of Saito knowing whether or not it was a success, as he wasn't there. His call to his associates was most likely based on Cobb saving him from limbo. But he does make the call. Cobb does go through security and he does go to see his children. However, of all the characters in the film, the one person who gives the biggest clues is Mal, or more specifically, Cobb's subconscious projections of Mal. Now, Cobb planted the idea in her mind that made her question her reality. Whether or not he actually succeeded in that is irrelevant. What is relevant is that Cobb believes it. So everything about him is derived from his feelings of guilt. Now, we know one cannot control their subconscious, Cobb said so himself, which means everything Mal is telling him is really his own deep thoughts that he hasn't fully acknowledged. In particular, questioning if his reality is real. Now, the worlds that we, the audience, are shown to be real, Cobb doesn't believe it is real. Deep down, he's questioning that reality himself. Now, why is that? Probably because it isn't. Cobb is a failure, riddled with guilt. He wants to believe the world he is in is real and that he needs to get home to see his children, but deep down he knows it isn't real, which is why his own subconscious Mal is telling him as much. Nash, Miles, Eames and Arthur are projections of people he knows in real life, so they behave with qualities that he sees in them which are representative of parts of himself. Nash, the architect that made a mistake with the carpet, then tried to bargain for his life. This shows Cobb's own failures and wanting to bargain his way back home but knowing that it would just get him arrested. so Cobb has to mentally get rid of him. Miles never approved of Cobb being a thief, but still introduced him to Ariadne. This is Cobb's regrets that it's all he can use his skills for, but accepting that it's maybe his only way back home. Eames doesn't really know for sure, he's just hoping and guessing his way through life. And Arthur, knowledgeable about everything, but doesn't truly believe Inception is possible. Or in Cobb's case, he keeps telling himself what he thinks he knows, but doesn't truly believe it's real. Yusuf, Saito and Ariadne are possibly people who he knows in real life too, or maybe just people who he knows of, or they may just be characters completely of Cobb's own mind. In any case, they're people who represent parts of himself as well. Yusuf, the chemist whose opinions change easily, that's many dreams within dreams is too unstable. But here's a good place to start. I used every day. Sharp, no? Cobb likes to think he's in control, but Ariadne, the inexperienced newcomer, shows us that he's not. Saito, always one step ahead, but can be bested, and his overzealous nature got him shot. Cobb believes he's the most skilled, but is consistently being shown that he is not. And Ariadne, the inexperienced student who manages to convince Cobb of letting her onto the plane and getting him to open up about his wife and his experiences in limbo to her, a person who he barely knows. Or perhaps, a person who he has known for a long time. Ariadne represents Cobb's wife. More specifically, she represents the person who tries to keep him balanced. But Cobb is a failure, doesn't handle pressure well, and as they are all extensions of him, they all either make mistakes, get something wrong, or just have flaws in their character. The worlds that we, the audience, are shown to be real in the film may not necessarily be the same world that Cobb and Mal woke up in, but if it isn't, somewhere between then and the film's main events, Cobb has gotten himself into a dream world that he knows isn't real, but wants it to be. Inception isn't a film about Cobb trying to plant an idea in Robert Fisher's mind, it's a film about Cobb trying to plant an idea in his own. And that is my theory on Inception. Let me know if you agree or disagree, or if you think there's something that I've missed. If you liked this video, then please show the like and share button some love. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of the other videos on the channel if you haven't already. Any questions about films, video games, or just life in general, let me know and I'll do my best to answer them. But that is all for now, so thank you for watching, and until next time, you mustn't be afraid to dream a little bigger, darling.